Good evening. I'm Katie.
I'm Destiny.
And this is the third part in our 3-part book talk series on how to lie with statistics. This time we're covering chapters 8, 9, and 10. So chapter 8 is called Post Hoc Rides Again. And basically it's about how the converse of a statement isn't necessarily true. So there was a study that showed that that cigarette smokers make lower college grades than non-smokers. And so, people try to make the connection, well, smoking causes lower grades. But that's not necessarily true, because there could be a whole host of other things. So the book talked about how having bad grades could drive a student to smoke, to get the edge off because they're upset about their grades. And smoking is not necessarily the causation of bad grades. And then another example that the book gives is the people of New Hebrides thought body lice produced good health. However, it's not necessarily true. What happened was the whole population was infected with lice, and then when people got sick, the fever would drive the lice away. So it's not really that the lice caused good health, it's that bad health made the lice go away. So the converse of a statement is not always necessarily true, and that's another statistical fallacy that occurs is when people make that leap.
So chapter 9 is called How to Statisticulate, which is not actually a word. Statisticulate in the book is defined as misinforming people by the use of statistical material or also called statistical manipulation. So they made up a word, statisticulate, whatever. So basically, this chapter is pretty much a summary of all the other ways that you can manipulate statistical data, which we've discussed in all the other book talks. Plus I added in a few more, like shading for pictures, and like we talked about before, using the different averages, the mean, median, and the modes to convey different things, and pretty much just what we went over before. So it's kind of just a chapter to reiterate the previous chapters with a fancy and hard to say word along with it, so that's pretty much it.
And finally, excuse me. And finally, we have how to talk back to a statistic. There were multiple questions, including that you should ask yourself when you are approached with a statistic, including who says so, how does he know, what's missing, did somebody change the subject, and I believe, does it make sense? So really, when you are approached with a statistic, you should always ask these questions, because the statistic might not always be true depending on who says it, because people can make statistics all the time, and how do they know? They can, if there's a study, then the statistic might be true, but if there's not, it might not be true. What's missing? Do you know all the information that went into the research, and is there a factor missing from the research? Did somebody change the subject? This was one of my more favorite ones, because there was an example in there about a prisoner being transferred from one prison to the next, and they were saying that it costs about the same as a hotel room. So now we're talking about hotels and not the prison anymore. And then, does it make sense? Does this statistic make sense with what you're trying to figure out? And that was pretty much just how you can talk back to the statistic and figure out if it was true or not. that was pretty much the chapter.
I think we should apply these questions to when we see stuff in newspapers and like on TV, because like especially with like drug companies, when they're like 76% of patients saw improvement. Well, what sample size did you use? Was it an independent study or did the drug company pay for it? Because all of those things can go into whether the statistic is actually legit or not. Wouldn't you guys agree?
I agree. I think that after reading this book, we're much more knowledgeable on the ways that you can lie with statistics. And we know that if a statistic is given, it's usually given in a way to lead the public to believe
It's more important than it actually is.
Right.
It means something completely different.
The statistics can be made to be misleading or even leading so that you don't necessarily create your own opinions on the topic. So I think now that we know that we're more educated and we can apply these questions and understand how they could be manipulating this data for us.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting how they can use it in politics a lot. Like, they say, oh, well, based on our survey, this president should win. But their survey is only like a phone survey or something like that, so you don't know who called in or who was actually watching, because if it's a bunch of old people, then they're not really a representation of the whole public. Like if it was a survey taken at like 12 p.m. when most people are working.
I think this is going to be important for us too because we have the 2016 election and it's going to be our first election to vote. So
Yeah.
that's going to be a pretty big one. So now we're able to choose the people that will be pretty much directing our society. So.
Yeah, and we can't take all the statistics to heart. We have to weed through and decide which ones are actually valid.
Alright, so that is our final book talk on how to lie with statistics.
Hi, I'm Katie.
Hi, I'm Destiny.
Hi, I'm Olivia.
Hi, I'm Peggy.
That's my mom. So, we're here to talk to my mom about the book. Fun stuff. So, what do you want to tell her about the book?
Well, it was called How to Lie with Statistics.
And basically it talked about how...
How to Lie with Statistics.
Would I like this book? Is it an interesting book?
It was pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
it's interesting. It's kind of like eye-opening as to, like, there's so many different ways that you can lie with statistics. Like, you can change, like, the scale of a graph to make it look like there was, like, a monumental increase, but really it was only, like, 1%.
I saw that recently. I was in the admin building, and it was one of the schools, and they were showing their improvements on, reading
Yeah.
and stuff for the test, and the scale instead of being 0 to 100 was like 0 to 60.
Yeah, that's a good example.
And
Yeah.
so the line was almost to the end, making it look like it was really good, but really it wasn't.
You can also lie with bias, and bias is like when you do like phone call.
You like phone call?
You do a phone call. You do like a phone survey, and not everyone will call it back, or not everyone answers because everyone's at work. So, like the whole sample size doesn't respond.
You're kind of just getting the response that you want.
Yeah.
Well,
based on
the other
their
thing
method.
that's more, because I don't know how old this book is.
It's
Very
from the
old.
50s.
Okay,
Very
so
old.
so a more recent thing is when they call cell phones,
Yeah.
because that can put bias on, who answers and who doesn't.
Yeah. You can also lie with, like your averages. You know, like, well, like you said, they're always, yeah, they're always trying to explain, like, improvement according to, like, average scores or average this or average that, and they're always comparing averages. Well, you never really know what the average is, because in this book they told us that the average could be, the mean, like we commonly think of it, where you take all the scores and you divide it by whatever number of scores there were. Or they could also use the mode, which is like the most common number, or the median, which is just the middle number, and they're all technically considered averages. So that's
Right.
pretty.
And they don't
interesting.
tell you which one they're using.
Right.
Yep.
So you can skew data that way.
They'd be lying.
So in like newspapers and stuff, they don't draw pictures to scale. Like the one example in the book was they do like a money bag, and it was like I forget what country, but like their average income, and then like the U.S. was like twice the size of it, but instead of just like increasing it by twice the size, they increased the width twice and then the height twice, so it was actually 4 times the size. So it looks like it like got really big, but it didn't get that big. So they don't scale the
visual bias is a huge thing too, because I mean, especially with the presidential elections, you know, you'll see a lot of like pictures of like candidates with a bunch of kids or a bunch of dogs or something, you know, and it makes them look like a real nice guy, but you never really know because it's not like they're gonna take pictures of them like smoking or, you know,
hitting babies,
poisoning crops or something, you know.
Like the mayor of in Canada, Toronto.
Wiener?
No, that's the one who sent pictures of his drunk. We're talking about the mayor, Rob Ford, the one who it came out that he's a crackhead, but like you wouldn't know he was a crackhead before he got elected because it's all like smiling, bright pictures.
So, I guess it's pretty scary, at least for me, because I know that they can pretty much manipulate you into thinking pretty much anything, you know. It's just
that's
weird
why
to think that
when it comes time to vote, you really have to do your research and try to find non-biased information. And it is out there, but you have to find it. Don't rely on the candidates to give you the information.
And I don't know about you, but I think the other thing that's scary for me is how uneducated the population is, you know? Like, these people are pretty much just, I mean, look at, what comes to mind for me is World War II, you know? Hitler he had some crazy bias out there, and it's like, we look at it now, and we're like, alright, well, obviously the Jews aren't, you know, bad like that, and they're not, like, crazy demented like these posters made them out to seem, but these people didn't know that, and they just...
Right.
You know, and I mean, that's the sort of thing that can happen when a population is uneducated, and I think it's scary to think how many people don't know this information.
I agree.
And like other statistics that people will believe, like it's talking about statistics that don't take into account like other numbers and populations. So 4 times more fatalities occur on the highways at 7 p.m. than 7 a.m. Well, there's more people on the road, yeah.
There's more people at 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. than there are at 7 a.m.
No, there's more people driving because they're driving home from work, and people have like different start times for work, but a lot of people end around 6, 7. So if there's more people on the road, then there's more of a chance for accidents. And the same thing goes with like, you know, they're saying all these like diseases and stuff are tripling. Well, since like the 1900s, but like the population has also tripled since then. And they're not really taking that into account. So it makes everyone's like freaking out, like, oh, why is all this stuff like has such a huge increase? Well, it's because the population has such a huge increase, and more doctors are diagnosing things like autism too. They don't take that into account either.
Yeah, statistics can be very misleading. They do that a lot too with like medical stuff.
Yeah, and as a parent, that has to worry.
And you see, you know, like especially when you've seen headlines and it's, you know, like it can be this much of an increase, but then you find out, well, the base that they started with was really tiny. So even if it's a 2/3 increase, it's like 2. You know, so that can always be misleading too. Yeah, headlines always try to make it sound because they want you to read the story, so they're trying to grab your attention whether it's valid or not.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. It was a great discussion.
And our first and final guest of our book talk series.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye.